Welcome everyone, my name is Andy, and in today's video I'm going to show you a series of movements and exercises using a piece of equipment called a suspension trainer. Now this series of movements on its own is a really good warm-up for lots of other activities, whether it's yoga, Pilates, it could be if you're going to do some weight training, maybe something with a fit ball. There's lots of different activities which this would be a really good way of preparing. But on its own, as a standalone series of movements, it has an amazing impact on your posture and how you use your body. So it can have the effect of helping to reprogram you towards better movement and how you kind of hold your body. And there are some studies that I've done, and some of those are actually on this YouTube channel that you can have a look at. So before we get started, I just want to point out some of the key features that are embedded within this series of movements. So the first one is there's a lot of joint mobilization and spine mobilization in this sequence. Secondly, there's a lot of head movement. And that's deliberate. Whenever you get a lot of head movement, it stimulates your inner ear. And in turn, stimulating your inner ear stimulates a part of your brain called the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is the part of your brain that's all to do with movement, and particularly movement coordination, particularly the rate and the rhythm and the accuracy of your movements. And so one of the things that happens when you stimulate that part of the brain is it sends signals down into your spinal stabilizers and helps to switch them on in a reflexive way. And that then becomes very helpful for any stabilization that occurs later on in the training that you might be doing afterwards. There's also a lot of what we call integrated core stability. And this is different to when you might do an isolated core stability movement. So an example that you might know of something that isolates your core stability might be doing something like a crunch exercise, where you're kind of isolating the abdominal muscles in the movement. So when we do integrated core stability, we're often doing a much more complex pattern of movement in which the core has to switch on in various different patterns in order to stabilize you. And this is how your body works in day-to-day movements and real-life situations, including sports. So it's really important that you train it in that kind of way. There's also some dynamic stretches in the sequence, and also a few what we call primal patterns. And so primal patterns include things like squats, lunges, certain pulling and pushing movements. And this will kind of, again, teach you how to do some of the functional, really important movement patterns, which a lot of people often do in quite a dysfunctional way. So it will reprogram a lot about how you move. It will improve your posture. And on its own, just doing this series of movements can have quite a big impact on not just posture and movement, but any aches and pains that you have. So give this sequence a try, utilize it with other training that you do, and let me know in the comments how it helps you. So I've set myself up so that I'm facing away from the anchor point, which is right up here where the suspension trainer is hooked over the door. So I'm facing away, and I'm up on my ball of the feet, up on the toes, and I'm going to hold my arms out straight, and I'm going to walk myself towards the wall and the door till I'm in a forward lean position, and then I'm just going to become aware of my posture. So what I'm trying to be aware of is whether I'm in a nice alignment. So sometimes when you go into this position, you might not realize that your head is down or looking up. It might be that you're a bit rounded through the shoulders. You could be arching too much in the lower back. So the idea is to become aware of your posture. And because of the forward lean, you're actually having to engage a lot of your core in more of a way than you would if you were just standing upright because of this forward position. So this is postural awareness, it's alignment, but it's already starting to very gently activate your core stability and your spinal, pelvic and shoulder stability as well. So from this position, the first movement is to do little rotations with the handles. So this is known as wax on, wax off. And you do 10 circles in one direction. They don't have to be huge circles. And once you've done 10, you then change direction and go the other way. But you keep your hands high enough that you're not actually rubbing on your arms or shoulders. And what this will do is these circular movements will get a little bit of mobilizing into your shoulders whilst you're holding that postural alignment. But what it will be doing is it stimulates a part of your cerebellum. It stimulates the intermediate zone of your cerebellum, which again is helping to increase the firing up of that part of your brain. So it helps to increase the switching on of your spinal stabilizers. So once you've done 10 in each direction, you stay in this position and we go into a chest press. Now, depending on your ability, you might find that if this is a bit too demanding, at the angle that you were in for the previous movement, you just walk yourself forwards until you find something which feels comfortable and moderate. So I'm going to go for this position. And what I'm doing is making sure that the straps don't rub on my arms or my elbows. So I might need to, in some cases, keep them a little bit higher if you need to. And the idea is to keep your posture as you lower yourself into the movement and push back out. It's all about maintaining the posture as you start to work through the chest, the shoulders, and the back of the arms. So with virtually all the movements, the target is to do 10. So this chest press movement shouldn't be too difficult. We're not working out as such. We're just kind of teaching the body how to move. And the idea is to do 10. So for the next movement, you're still facing away from the anchor point, and the start position is to come into a lunge and let the arms come up above the head. And at the moment, when I just put my knee down on the floor and come into a lunge, my arms are in front of my head. And what I want to do is just shuffle myself forwards until the arms are almost alongside the ears. And then with a little bit of a lean, you can lean in and feel a nice stretch. And once you've got your feet in that position, that's how you know where your start position is. So I'm now going to step back to where my toes are on the back foot. And so this is now my start position. And the movement is to take the step forwards into the lunge, and then we lean into it, relaxing through the shoulders, and just get a lovely stretch, and we hold it for roughly 10 seconds. So 10 is the number to remember with each of these movements. So it's either 10 repetitions or holding for about 10 seconds. And then after we've done 10 seconds, we step back and then we step forwards, lunging onto the other side, leaning into it. So what we're doing is combining a step forward into a lunge and then pushing back out. And then we have this lovely holding for about 10 seconds where we get this lovely stretch. And then we step back and we change again. This time we come into a position with the arms out to the side. The arms should be anywhere from shoulder height to kind of head height, but not too high. So roughly about head height is ideal. And then you lean into it in the same way. And this time we're getting a different kind of stretch. So a stretch across the chest and the front of the shoulders. And we again hold it for about 10 seconds. And then you step back, change over to the other side, lean into it to feel the stretch. And so this is an area that really often needs to be stretched out, particularly if you work at a desk or you're hunched over in some way during the day. And then we step back. And then on the next one, we step forwards. And as we step forwards, we allow the arms to come back up alongside the ears. And whichever knee is in front of you, as you can see I've got my left knee in front, that left arm is going to drop to the side and the other arm will stay alongside the ear, and you turn to look in the same direction as the arm that dropped out to the side, and you're leaning in to the arm that's alongside your ear. And we hold it for 10 seconds, and then we come out of that little rotation, push back out, step in on the other side, and then you let the other arm drop out, turn the head in that direction, lean into the arm which is above the head, hold it for 10 seconds. So in these demonstrations, I'm sometimes not holding them for the whole 10 seconds, and then we come back out, and then we step back. And that completes the second sequence. So in the third sequence, I'm going to combine a rowing movement with a squatting movement in an integrated way. And in order for you to be able to do this properly, I need to point out a few really important details for each movement. So starting with the row. So with this time you're facing towards the anchor point, and a general starting guide would be with the handles so that there's tension in them. In other words, they're not kind of slack. You walk to a position where the handles can touch your body. So this is a good distance, generally speaking, to do this, and you can then make a small adjustment with where your feet are if you do want to make it easier or harder. So generally speaking, for the rowing, if you walk closer towards the wall, you're going to make it harder, and if you walk a little bit further back with your feet position, you're going to make it a bit easier. So I grab onto the handles and I lean back into it, and you can come onto your heels if you wish, or you can keep the feet down, whichever you feel works for you. You then want to be aware of your posture. So again, you don't want the head to be down or rounded or too much arch in your lower back. So you think about your postural alignment. The key thing with the posture with this one is keep the sternum lifted as you do the movement. Think of your hands and your fingers as being like hooks. So you're not gripping too hard, they're just hooked over the handles. And when you pull yourself towards the handles, you feel as if you're pulling not with the hands and the arms, but the arms and the hands are just like connectors, and you're pulling through the back. And so this is the movement, pulling yourself towards the handles, keeping good posture, keeping the sternum lifted, and then lowering back down again. So some of the things that tend to go wrong with this one is people will roll through the wrists, and you'll often see then the elbows rolling out. So this is to be avoided. When you pull yourself towards the handles, it doesn't matter if the elbows aren't tight to the side of the body. They can be a little bit out to the side, but the general thing is not to allow the wrists to roll and the elbows to flare out. So that's the key alignment points with the hands. And when you pull yourself towards the handles, they don't have to touch your body. Some people think that the handles have to come right to the body or right beside you, and that can mean that you end up putting yourself into an unnatural alignment. So just pull yourself towards the handles and just stop. And when it feels that you've gone as far as you can comfortably with good alignment, and then lower back down again. So this is the movement. And then one final thing is when you pull yourself all the way up, you want to make sure that with your shoulder blades that you have a little squeeze with the shoulder blades. Some of the things that you often see being taught in rowing movements is to squeeze the shoulder blades back, as I'm doing now, at the beginning of the movement, and then pull yourself. So I'm going to teach you not to do that. So what I want you to do is to pull yourself up and then just encourage a little bit of a squeeze at the end. And so this will encourage your back and your shoulders and your arms to work so that they share the resistance and the loading appropriately between all the different muscles. And so this is the rowing movement. And then with the squatting movement, you can be in the same position, and you don't want your feet to be too narrow or too wide, but you want your feet to either be pointing forwards or you can turn them out a few degrees. And you then sink down into the hips and the knees as far as you feel comfortable. So you can make it a small movement, or if you're able to, you might be able to go all the way down and then come back up again. But the idea is to work within what you're capable of doing, and when you combine the two, you would end up doing the row, and as you're lowering yourself out of the row, you're going into the squat at the same time. And as you're coming out of the squat, you're pulling into the row at the same time. And so this is an integrated movement rather than doing the squat first and then you do the row second and you're alternating between the two. That's a different pattern to the movement, and we want to encourage a more integrated pattern. So when you're doing your squat, just make sure your knees are traveling in line with your feet. And one of the things that's quite useful, if I put this down and just face the camera, if you were to keep your feet flat on the floor and you just squatted down into what was comfortable, you would find that your feet and your body would go into a particular pattern and it might not be symmetrical. And that's okay, because if you ever look at x-rays and scans of the body, our actual skeletal system isn't symmetrical. So some people are taught to have the feet a certain distance and always pointing in a certain way. And when you go down, it might not feel very, that there's a lot of range and freedom through the hips. So find the distance and whether one foot wants to turn out, and just find out what is comfortable to squat down, and then use that particular setup for the squatting. And then when you do the combined, you've got a really good programming for squatting and rowing, which are two very functional, very important movements, which are often done very badly in many cases. So again, it's 10 of those in total. So when you pull and then you come out of it going into the squat, that's 1, and you do 10 altogether. And that completes that sequence. Okay, so the next sequence is very much a rotational pattern, and you're going to be facing the anchor point, holding the handles with the palms downwards, and feet just hip or shoulder distance apart. And then from here, with your spine feeling as if it's nice and long and lengthened, I'm going to get you to pivot forwards to about 45 degrees roughly, and then just unlock your knees a little bit. So you've got this lovely 45-degree angle or thereabouts, and with a nice long spine, sternum gently lifted, this is the position that we hold. And just by holding this position, we're engaging the core muscles and being aware of our spinal alignment. And so the movement begins by bringing the arm out to the side and then returning. And we alternate left and then right sides. And the idea is to do a total of 10. So it's 5 on each side. You could do a little bit more if you want to, but keeping that postural alignment as we do so. But you'll notice that my head is looking forwards and I'm just bringing the arm as far out to the side as it feels comfortable. The rest of my body is staying completely still. So this starts to open up the chest and the front of the shoulder, and it starts to get a bit of shoulder mobility. So once you've done roughly 10 on each side, you continue, but you allow the head to follow where the hand goes. And we do another 10 repetitions. So this is now getting head, neck and shoulder integration as we continue to work through that shoulder and chest area whilst maintaining good postural alignment. Once you've done 10 of those, 5 in each direction, you continue, and you can allow now movement through the rest of the body. So you can allow hips, spine, other parts, even the knees to move a little bit, as you just allow the arm to come in a nice big circle around you, and the head is following where the hand goes. And we do 10 of these, and when you've finished, that completes the sequence. So for the next movement, we're going to do something called the CAC Squat. And you need to be facing, again, the anchor point, so you'll be facing towards the wall or the door. And you want to position yourself to set yourself up so that rather than having the handles touching the body, you walk away a little bit so that you have your elbows next to your body. So this is a good general starting point, and you can make little refined adjustments once you're doing the movement to make it more suitable to your unique body size and measurements. So from here, I'm going to widen my stance, nice and wide, and the movement is to bend one knee and lunge or squat to the side, and then the leg that stays straight, I turn onto the heel and have the toe pointing straight up. And you try to come as low as you can. Now, some people might find that this is as far as they can go, and you would come up and then do the same on the other side. But if you're able to, you come all the way down and you keep the heel on the floor. So this leg that I've got bent here on this leg, I've got the heel on the floor. I'm not coming up onto the toes. And on this other leg that's straight, I've got the toes pointing straight up. And if you get the distance right, you can see how my arms are straight. And I've got this lovely, gentle lengthening through the spine, into the shoulders. And then I come back up and then over to the other side. And so with this one, we just hold it for 1 to 2 seconds and we alternate until we've done a total of 10, 5 each side. Remembering that you don't have to go all the way down into the position. So when you are in the position, just remember that this leg that comes into the bend, you want to make sure that the knee is pointing roughly the same direction as that toe. So if that knee starts to buckle inwards, or you come up onto the toe in some way, then you're probably going too deep into that movement. So that completes the CAC squat, and there are just 2 more movements in this sequence. In this next movement, I'm going to show you a lovely lat stretch. So a stretch for latissimus dorsi, which kind of are the muscles that you can feel kind of here and here. But essentially, it's the muscle that attaches the bones of your arms to your spine and into your kind of pelvis as well. And so without that muscle, you don't have a way that you can utilize your arms and connect it to your spine. So it's a really important muscle to keep functional. And in a lot of cases, that muscle can get very, very tight. And this movement is a great way of helping to just gently release it in a dynamic way. So we set ourselves up with the suspension trainer. So again, we're facing the anchor point, and we make sure there's tension in the straps, and we come close enough that those handles can touch the body. So this is the starting distance. And then what we do is we straighten the arms, so we're leaning back in. And this was the position that we used for the rowing and the squatting. So what we're going to do now is we're going to unlock the knees. We're going to let the chin drop down and just allow ourselves to round through the spine. So we're very rounded. And then there's 2 ways that you can do this. The simple way is just to rotate and then come back to the center and rotate the other way. And what I'm attempting to do is always look between the 2 arms. So you're not looking over the shoulder. So the head turns with the turning of the body. To take it to the full position is as you turn, you would come up onto the heel and straighten that leg, and it increases the stretch. And then we come back. So we rotate. So I'm rotating to my left. I straighten the left leg, come up onto the heel, and then return. And we alternate from side to side until you've done a total of 10. So 5 in each direction. This is one of those movements where it wouldn't surprise me if some of you are trying to do this one and it just doesn't feel right. So have a go with it. Sometimes from experience, I've needed to be in the room with someone actually kind of breaking it down and helping them to get this one right. So if you need to, miss that one out if you're really struggling. So we've got one more movement, and this movement gets you to go into a very rounded position and then to go into a very extended position. And the extended position is done with a little bit of momentum, a little bit of explosiveness. And it's the reason why it's done at the very end of this sequence, so that all the other movements have made it so that you're ready to do something with a little bit of energy to it. And to show the movement, we come into the same position that we used in the lat stretch, the previous movement. So I'm going to be close enough that my handles can touch the body. I then lean back into it, soften the knees, curl up into a ball, chin tucked in, and this is the rounded position. And then from the hips, you're going to extend into a position like this. So it's a star shape. I've got the arms kind of at 45 degrees out to the side, and then I come back into that rounded position. So it's a little bit of momentum, and you do 10 of those. And so that particular movement is designed to get you working in an explosive way from your center of gravity, from the hips, and it gets kind of the whole of the what's called the extensor chain activating. So when you're doing a lot of particularly sporting movements, it requires that power generated from the hips can actually be utilized through the whole chain. And if you don't kind of practice or develop that, then often your body loses that ability. And so when you then try to do something, maybe you're just lifting some furniture or doing something where you have to integrate the body with a lot of strength or explosiveness, you're at a high risk of injuring yourself. So this is a really important movement, and be careful with it. And it's the final movement, 10 repetitions, and hopefully just from going through that whole sequence, you'll feel different in the way that you're standing, the way that you're moving, and daily or even just 2 or 3 or 4 times a week of using just this sequence will give you results in how you're feeling in terms of aches and pains, all sorts of improvements in posture and movement. So see how you get on with it, and as usual, as I always say, let me know in the comments how you're getting on.